Good afternoon, everyone. You are in the spotlight with Brian Garden for this Friday, October the 28th, 2016. Good to have you all here for our second and final show of the week. I forgot we didn't have a show on Tuesday. Sorry for the very late start here this afternoon. Work was a I feel like I've been saying that for the last 2 months that we've been late on almost every show. But I apologize. Things have just been quite hectic with work and everything else. So do apologize for that. But here we are on this Friday afternoon. And I'm not going to go on and on about why I'm late. I'm just going to go, as we always try to do with these Friday afternoons, so try to be as quick as possible, get in what we have to get in, and all that kind of stuff. So, without further ado, let's get on to it. As always, at the top of the show, I want to remind you all the ways in which you can interact and contribute to our show, have your voice heard by emailing us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. Make sure you use the hashtag itspotlight411 if you can, or you can create your own hashtag. Just make sure you start with hashtag ITS to help promote our show. Otherwise, you can add on to whatever else you want, as long as it's not disrespectful or offensive. That's all we ask. We also encourage you to follow us on Facebook. To search for In the Spotlight 411 on Facebook, and make sure you like our page upon finding it. Okay, so here we are on this Friday afternoon. Of course, this is the football blitz. We'll do what we always do, which is we'll start off by we'll obviously look back at last week in the NFL, look ahead to this week in the NFL, talk about last night's Thursday night football game. We will talk some college football, look back at last week, look ahead to this week, which won't take long because there's not a lot going on right now. So we'll talk about that. I mentioned last week that we might start the whole mailbag thing. I mentioned to you all that one of the segments, those of you that do not know, one of the segments that we do on these football blitz, so especially once we get to the middle part of the season in both college and the NFL, we usually do what's called a mailbag segment, where we kind of just address questions and comments related to football, whether it's college or NFL, from the fans. And we pick a couple, we just address them with different topics, that kind of thing. Well, we're not going to do that today. Not obviously, time is a situation because we are starting late, but also because there really wasn't a whole lot to talk about. There wasn't a whole lot of major topics and all that kind of stuff. So we're not going to start there. We'll wait till next week. Plus, next week's the start of November. So you know what? We'll start it with a new month and go from there. So we won't be doing that here today. So we'll just do the usual stuff here today, and we'll leave it at that. So I'm just typing in the social media links here. Making sure we got these in. Sorry about this, folks. Hopefully we'll be able to do this without having me to type it on the air soon. I hate the way I do this. And yes, I do know I can program these things ahead of time. I just don't do it because sometimes I change things on the fly. So that's why I don't do it. All right, so with all that being said, we discussed what we have to do today. So let's get started, and we'll start off, as we always do, in the NFL. With what transpired last week. And I mentioned last week when we were talking about the previous week that I feel like the league is finally. I felt like things finally get going well, across the league. I felt like the quality of play is up. I feel like we're starting to get a picture of the teams to look at. As the games are getting competitive. We're getting some good matchups. I feel like the season, and this is what usually happens. We've been lucky the last couple of years where, in a lot of ways, it feels the season got off to an early start because we had some good matchups. We had a couple good matchups early, but this year it kind of lagged a little bit, and I really feel like it took till about last week for things to truly pick up and for things to really just start amping up, for the season to really feel like okay, things are getting good. Like every week you're excited about the NFL. Finally I feel like we're at that point. We see who the teams are, and as I said last week, I also think too that I think we're going to have a very easy playoff picture this year. I think that, usually you get to this point, the teams to watch are who the teams to watch, but you have a whole bunch of teams that are kind of hanging on, and they usually hang on to maybe about week 12, week 13, maybe even week 14. I don't think you're going to have too many teams hanging on this year. I think by the time we get to week 12, some of these teams are going to be out of it. I really do. I think there's a good balance this year, and I think that, you're not going to see too many teams like hanging around 8-8 or whatever. I think you're going to have a lot of double-digit win teams, like, and that's going to prevent some teams from hanging around as long as they usually do. Because you usually look across the league and maybe all but 4 teams still have a viable chance. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I really don't. So I think that's a change as compared to the last couple years where, we look around week 9, week 10 and go, oh, wow, there's like easily like 17, 18 teams that can conceivably still make a run at this thing. So, that I think is something different as opposed to the last couple years. So I don't think you're going to see too much of that going forward. So we got a career playoff picture. Everything that seems to be coming together. These teams have gelled together. So I think that things really got underway last week, and 2 weeks ago, I should say. And then last week kind of carried on that momentum. I think the NFL had another good week last week. Where a lot of good games, some great games that kind of, really just continue to add to things, add to the momentum and add to some of the compelling storylines that we have going forward here. And I'm pulling up week 7's numbers right now. And, we're going into week 8 this week. We're at the halfway point already, if you can believe it. It's just been crazy how fast things have gone this year. It feels like things go faster each and every year. So you look back, we're looking back at week 7 right now. And, again, it was a great week. A great week. And you started off with last Thursday night's game, which we talked about last week, which really wasn't much of a game. And the Packers just getting a nice pickup win against the Bears. Giants started off things in London with a big win over the Rams, 17-10. A great defensive effort. Not as good of an offensive effort as their previous week, but still enough to make you feel good about things. 4 interceptions they drew. Rams offense looked like it did in the first 2 weeks. Ugly, just did not get anything done. Giants defense was phenomenal. A good solid win for the Giants, and a much needed win for the Giants. To kind of continue to stabilize them. The Saints needed a win this week. They didn't get it. I think that's it for them, only because of the way that the Falcons are playing. I think that finishes them off. They needed a big win. They did not get it. The Chiefs defense held them down, did a very good job. Even though they had the 3 touchdowns, they kept it from being an explosive day for Drew Brees. Anytime you can hold that guy under 400 yards, that's a good day, I guess. And that's what they did. And the Chiefs just offensively made work of the Saints. Look, the Saints don't have a defense. If you can score around 30 points on the Saints and hold them around 20, you're going to win the game. And that's exactly what they did. So a big win for the Chiefs. Right now 3-0 at home. Chiefs are right back on track, and that's what the Chiefs do. They start off a little slow, and they pick it up, and they're very much in the mix here. The Colts, who really were in a must-win, got that big win that they needed against a really bad team in the Titans. Titans were deceptive. Were deceptive, I should say. 3-3 going into the week. They had no business being 3-3, but they were. The Colts needed this win, or in my opinion, their season was done. It gets them back to 3-4 with the way that division's going. They're not out of it, but it's a big win for them, getting a win on the road. Defensively, they were a mess, but you never really gauge the Colts defensively because sometimes they're just too inconsistent with that. But offensively, they got the job done. And look, a win's a win at this point. They got it. They're now tied with the Titans. Now they got to get back on track and go after the Texans. They have to rattle off about 3 or 4 in a row, I think, the Colts, or they're going to be in trouble. So the Colts, again, we had a lot of teams that I thought were in a must-win. I thought the Giants, I felt like, had to win. They won. The Saints, I felt like, had to win. They lost. The Colts, I felt like, had to win. They won. So a couple of these teams doing what they need to do. I thought the Eagles – I didn't think the Eagles were in a must-win because I thought they've been playing a little bit better aside from maybe a week or two. That even the Giants, because even since some of the wins the Giants had, I didn't think they were playing as well as they were capable of. The Eagles were playing an unbeaten team. So if they lost that game, I don't think you were going to go crazy. But the fact that they won this game, it probably was the biggest game, the best win of the weekend, adds a lot to them. The Eagles putting up a 21-10 win on the Vikings, knocking them from the ranks of the unbeaten. So now there are no unbeatens left in the NFL. I felt, look, the Vikings defense just wasn't as crisp as it's been. You can blame that on the bye week. You can blame that on the fact that they were just playing a better team. I don't know. The Eagles are really good. They took what was given to them. They didn't force it. And their defense was phenomenal, and they kept the run contained, and they did a good job. And it's a solid win. The Eagles now 3-0 at home, and now they sit at 4-2. So it was a big win for the Eagles. It kind of makes up for one of the losses they had that they probably shouldn't have had. So it's a nice, solid win for the Eagles, and it's a tough loss for the Vikings, who now, hey, you've lost. All right, now you got to regroup, or you're going to be in a dogfight with the Packers. You had an advantage. Now you've lost half of that advantage. So, big win for the Eagles. Now, they weren't in a must-win. A team that I thought was in a must-win was the Bengals, because you're playing the Browns. You got to win that game, and they did. And they did it in solid fashion, 31-17. It was a must-win, or their season would have been over. Now they're at 3-4, and now this week's another must-win for them. And the same goes really for the Colts as well. Again, these Colts and the Bengals have to rattle off about 3 or 4 in a row just to put them in a secure position to be in the race going forward. So Bengals and Colts both in must wins this weekend, in my opinion. Detroit gets a huge win over the Redskins, 20-17, and again, I mentioned the quality of play has been up across the league the last couple of weeks. This game was not a good game. This was an ugly game. Which is shock. I mean, it's not shocking for the Redskins to make a game ugly because they got a good defense, but the Lions do not have a good defense. They just got lucky. The Redskins were just off. They just weren't very good. Cousins was okay, 301 yards of TD. He just wasn't very. The Redskins offense just didn't click. Lions made some plays late. Stafford did a good job. And you look at the Lions, they're 4-3. You got to be surprised at where they're at. Give them credit. They're in it right now. And if they can keep win a couple more games, they're going to be really in it. So right now, I would consider them as a team to kind of keep an eye on, but I wouldn't take them very seriously at this point because 4-3 is, especially in that division, you don't know. But this was a tough loss for the Redskins, but especially given that the Giants and the Eagles won and the Cowboys were in a bye. It was a tough loss for the Redskins. And look, they got to get back on track because again, in that NFC East, any sustained losing streak could be the difference. It really could. It's going to be a very close race. But big win for Detroit. Raiders with a huge win over the Jaguars, 33-16. To me, it was a must-win for the Jaguars. Look, you got to be very happy with the way they played, but at some point you got to get some wins. And coming off of what the momentum they had, they needed to win this game. I thought at least being competitive would have helped, but in my opinion, they had to win this game. They did not do that. I don't know if it was quite as much of a must-win because that division's awful, but I felt like it was. You really wanted to try to get this game. And look, the Raiders were all over them, beat them on both sides of the ball. To me, this was the Jaguars' worst performance, and it happened at home. They just offensively nothing clicked, and defensively they were a mess. If they're a mess defensively, then that's bad. That's their one trademark. So it's a solid win for the Raiders, who are 4-0 on the road. So they're proven to be the road warriors this year. And Raiders now sit at 5-2, so they're sitting pretty right now. They feel pretty good about things. That's one of those teams that nobody expected to do well. Well, I shouldn't say nobody expected to do well. That's one of them teams that people thought could be better this year that might be doing even better than you'd expect. So big win for the Raiders. This week's shock victory comes from the Dolphins once again. They beat the Steelers last week, and this week they beat the Red Hot Bills 28-25. Dolphins have played well at home. And this game, it really look, they just played well on both sides of the ball. A solid offensive effort, a great defensive effort. They shut down the Bills' offense, which had been on fire of late. And look, that was a bad loss for the Bills. I mean, look, you got to win these games. These are games that you need to win. You're giving games back. You had beaten the Patriots. You were on track to do some things. I mean, look, it's not devastating, but to me, it's a momentum crushing win because you lost a game that you should win. And I know you only lost by 3, but these are the games that you look back on if you do not make the playoffs and you go, well, if we only had beaten that team that we should have beaten. And you're going to look at that Miami game and go, yep, if we had beaten that team if we had beaten Miami, we would have made the playoffs. If we lose out by a game, that could be the difference. I mean, these games, I can't tell you how many times you see teams that are clearly better than the team that they just lost to, and you look back on that game and go, you know what, that's the game that cost them. And this might end up costing the Bills. It really, really might. So that was a devastating loss and a huge win for the Dolphins. I thought I didn't think the Ravens were in a must-win, but I thought they really needed a win for their psyche. They didn't get it as the Jets, who, you know what, they're gonna be that tough team under 500 that nobody wants to play because the Jets are still a good team. It's just that nothing's worked for them this year. Look, the quarterback situation's been a little bit of a mess. They've had some injury. Look, it just hasn't worked this year like it did last year. So sometimes it happens. But for the Ravens, the biggest problem's been the offense. Flacco just has not looked good. They've been waiting for it to click together. Obviously, he missed a year. Obviously, you were hoping by now things would happen. It hasn't happened. He had 2 picks this week in this game. It just was offensively, they just couldn't get the job done. Defensively, it wasn't bad. Just offensively, they couldn't get the job done. They suffer a 24-16 defeat. Now they sit at 3-4. Obviously, the Steelers have suffered a couple bad losses. You know, the Bengals are right there with the Ravens at 3-4. So, I mean, your season's not over, but these next few weeks for the Ravens, these next, I say, 3 weeks these next 4 weeks, I should say, for the Ravens. You know, they're big for everybody, but I think they're really big for Baltimore because you know what? Even if you're not really focused on this year, and obviously they are, but you really want to look at Joe Flacco here. You want to see if it's not working, you know what? Maybe you try something else. Maybe you put somebody else out there because you know, the learning on the fly thing, eventually you have to give up on if it's not working. And I'm not saying he has to learn because he obviously knew what he was doing before, but things just aren't clicking and maybe the offense needs to change. And I know he's your guy. He won a Super Bowl. I'm not saying you're giving up on Joe Flacco, but maybe you just take him out for a game or two and just say, you know what, Joe, we need to do something here to save our season. It's just not clicking right now. Let's see what we can do. And I understand that he'll be upset about that. And you don't want to look. I think he can take it. He's not going to be demoralized. He knows you're behind him, or I mean, or at the very least, make sure he knows that you're behind him. Otherwise, you might have a problem. But I don't know. I just think that Baltimore needs to do something to get this offense going. You know the defense most times is going to be there. You got to get the offense going. If it really is a case of Joe Flacco just not being 100% back to what he was, then maybe you turn to somebody else just to kind of right the ship and then look back at him when you kind of got things back in play. It's not the worst idea in the world. Buccaneers with a big win over the 49ers, 34-17, a dominant win. Again, a team that they're clearly better than you have to beat, and they did that. And so now the Buccaneers are back at 3-3, very much in play. You feel good if you're Tampa right now. You feel good. Devastating loss for the Falcons in overtime to the Chargers, 33-30. It's a huge win for the Chargers. Saved their season. They're back on track. Are they back in the thick of things? Not quite yet, but they're on the road to it. A great offensive effort. Not the best defensive effort, but same thing with the Falcons. Good offensive effort, horrible defensive effort. You know, eventually some of these games have to go San Diego's way. It's been a couple years since they seem to really have done that, but maybe they're finally starting to turn. It's a big win for the Chargers and the Falcons, who a couple weeks ago, everybody was like, oh, most dominant team in the NFC along with the Cowboys. They've fallen to 4-3. And what that has done, it's kept Tampa alive. It keeps the Saints somewhat alive. Although, again, they've lost a couple home games, so I don't know. But I think it keeps things more alive for Tampa than it does for anybody else at this point. I'm not saying the Panthers because they're so far out of it, and I don't think they're going to factor in anything. So, but it does keep things alive for Tampa, maybe even New Orleans. So these 2 losses these last couple of weeks have been really difficult, and to have both losses 2 losses at home already for the Falcons. Again, it's the same thing as the Saints. These 2 teams that usually do well at home are just not doing it. It's interesting. Some teams are doing better on the road than they are at home, and for some of those teams that they're usually teams that dominate at home, and they're not doing that. So it's kind of interesting to see. Game of the weekend I thought was going to be Patriots Steelers. I don't know if it quite. I mean, look, on paper it should have been the game of the weekend. I mean, it lived up to most of the hype. Patriots with a 27-16 win. Look, New England made a lot of mistakes in this game. Pittsburgh just didn't make the most of them. They just didn't. Offensively, they just couldn't get things going. New England just did what they do. They grinded it out. And again, with this loss, 4-3, and of course they had that Miami loss last week, 2 straight losses. You look at the Bengals and you look at the Ravens at 3-4. They're sitting there looking at the Steelers going, you know what? You've kept us around. And you look at the Bengals and the Ravens, you're probably thinking, oh, they're in bad shape. Well, you look at the Steelers, they're 4-3. So it's far from a done deal here that the Bengals and the Ravens are in trouble, and it's the same thing as what's going on in the NFC South or even the AFC South. You look across the board here, some of these teams are just keeping other teams around when they shouldn't. So it keeps some of these teams in it longer than they probably should be. Sunday Night Football, you're gonna look at a score like 6-6, and obviously Seahawks Cardinals finished in a tie, which could be huge later on because it's for the division, obviously. Here's the thing, okay? You look at a score like this, and you might think, "Wow, that's a horrible game, man. No scoring, whatever." It was a good game. I don't remember the last time I've seen two defenses so razor sharp like that. Both teams defensively were amazing in this game. Offensively, look, you had to earn anything you got, which wasn't a lot, obviously. Ends up finishing in a tie. I hate this rule. I really wish they finished the game. I don't agree with finishing any game in a tie, but I digress. It was one of those rare, low-scoring, really good games to watch, I think. So, you know what? Big performance by both teams, and we'll see if that tie factors into anything down the road. Monday Night Football, Broncos needed to get back on track. They got a win to get back on track with a dominant performance on offense and defense against the Houston Texans, who, again, I thought were overrated to begin with. 27-9, Denver pulls it out at home. It's a big win for Denver, kind of rights the ship a little bit, ties them with the Raiders. Texans drops them to 4-3. Again, that's how big that Colts victory was last week. Because here's the thing. Texans lose, Colts win. You picked up that game that you lost to them. So now you're still right there if you're the Colts. So you feel good about it now. So that's how big that win was. And that's how big the Texans' loss was to the Broncos. Now, again, I didn't expect them to beat the Broncos, but how quickly things can change when you're in a division like that where it's 4-3 at the top and not like, you look at New England, it's 6-1 at the top. So you look at that, you look at Buffalo, they're next up 4-3. You got a 2-game lead right there. You look at the AFC South. Houston's on the top at 4-3. Colts are at second with 3-4. Only a game out. I mean, that might not seem like a lot, but it goes to show you that, some of these teams could have pulled away. They didn't. You keep teams around. It's early yet anyway. Opens things up a little bit. So, Cowboys and Panthers both had byes. So as you look across the league, again, some of these teams I mentioned needed must-wins, got it. Some didn't. The playoff picture, pretty much the same as last week. Anybody that was in it last week is still relatively in this week. Some teams did improve their standing. The Giants, the Colts, the Chargers. Some teams slipped and didn't help their standing. The Saints, for instance, one of those teams. If you believe in the Titans, obviously, the Jaguars. So we go into the halfway point. We go into week 8, halfway point of the season. Obviously, this is an important week. Again, we conclude the second portion of the season. Week 8 is always a signal to all these teams. Look, if you're way out of it, what are you going to do the rest of the way? You're going to blow this thing up. You're going to make trades or whatever. Are you still in it? Do you think you need to make a move to keep in it? What's the plan here? What do you do? What's the angle? What's the angle here? What's the end game here? What are we looking at? Do you think you have a chance? And this is where you look at it and you go, all right. You look at the league and you go, who's in play, who's not. And we've already been talking about that the last couple of weeks where we kind of have an idea of who's in play and who isn't. And as I said, I think by week 12 or even earlier than that, we might have an idea of who's seriously in the playoff hunt and who isn't. I think we'll have an idea about that. So that's going to be interesting to watch and see who hangs in there because we do have some teams around 3-4, 4-4, 4-3, that kind of thing. And I think a lot of those teams are going to end up falling out of it over these next couple of weeks and making the playoff picture pretty clear and kind of weeding things out. And that's really what these next 4 weeks are. As you go past week 8, from week 9, week 9, week 10, and week 11, week 12, it's more about weeding these teams out that are not serious contenders. And in a way, we've already kind of done that a little bit. But like I said, I think earlier than we normally do, you're going to see that this year. I don't think it's going to go the full 4 weeks over the next 4 weeks. I think by week 10, you're going to have a pretty good idea of who's really seriously in it. Even though for like right now, we know who the elite teams are. We know like top tier who the top tier teams are, who's the middle tier, who's kind of on the fringe looking in. We kind of know that. These last couple of weeks have kind of given us that idea. But over these next, I say maybe 2 weeks or so, we're going to really weed some teams out and really be left with the teams to kind of watch as we go down the stretch as far as being serious, really true playoff contenders, not teams just hanging around. So we'll see how it goes as we head to the halfway point of the season. Week 8 started last night, the halfway point of the season. We started off with a game that I don't think many people cared about, the Titans and the Jaguars, but it obviously matters. And if last week didn't finish the Jaguars off, I think this did. 36-22 loss to the Titans. The Titans now stand at 4-4. Very much still in play, but again, do you buy the Titans? I don't. I never have. I guess it puts a little pressure on the Colts to stay in line with at least the Titans. And of course puts a little bit of pressure on the Texans because they're right there at 4-3. So puts a little bit of pressure on both those teams. But again, it depends from an outside perspective here. If you don't trust the Titans, which I don't, you don't really put a lot of stock in this win. It doesn't really matter. I would have put more stock in the Jaguars winning this because we've seen the Jaguars play well against good teams. The Titans is awful. So, but it's a tough loss for the Jaguars that probably puts any of their playoff aspirations away for the year, which is sad because the way they played in the first couple of weeks, they played great. They should have beaten the Packers. They were playing really good. Suffered a couple of close losses. Did that break them? I don't know. But, I think Jacksonville has a lot to build on, and hopefully, they shouldn't give up yet. But, I won't say, okay, let me rephrase that. They got to keep playing hard. They have to keep playing hard because that division is crappy. Who knows? But I do think they're finished. I think that game last night finished them off. But you got to keep playing hard. And you know what? I know there's no moral victories, but if they can somehow finish the season at 500, I think they'd feel good about things. But I think they have a lot to build on for sure going forward. So that was last night's game. As you look ahead to Sunday's schedule, once again, you have another London game. Yeah, it's a good one. 9:30 a.m. Eastern from Wembley Stadium on Fox this game. The 4-3 Redskins coming off a tough loss, playing the 3-4 Bengals who are coming off a big win. It's a big game for both teams. Redskins, again, any sustained losing streak in the NFC East could be the difference this year. I really believe that. You don't want to lose more. You don't want to go on a losing streak. They've only lost one. You lose another one. Who knows how that's going to factor into things. So it's a big game for the Redskins to get back on track. And it's a big game for the Bengals because a win here gets them back to 500. And the division's still there for them with the Ravens being at 3-4, Steelers being still at 4-3. It's still there for them. So I expect a very competitive game. It's probably the best of the London games. To me, the key to this game is going to be this. What offense for the Redskins shows up? Do we see the Redskins at their full offensive strength with their explosiveness and their awesome dynamics? What kind of game you're going to get out of Cousins? Last week it was kind of a down game for him. Really, what kind of offensive game do we get from the Redskins? Defensively, they're going to play well. Offensively, how many points do they put on the board? If it's a kind of game where the Redskins are scoring at will and it's in the high 20s or even 30s, then I think the Redskins win this game. If it's like last week where they play low end, even if Cousins gets around 300 yards, they're more on the low end of things, in the low 20s or even below that. I think the Bengals win. I'm expecting a big comeback performance by the Redskins. I have a little more faith in the Redskins than I do the Bengals. You all know I've been talking a lot about their mental state. Given how they played in the playoffs the last couple of years after having great regular season, I wonder if maybe, mentally they're just not as strong as they've been in the past. We'll see. If they can pull off this win, then I might feel differently about them. I feel a little bit better about them because this is a tough matchup for them. But If they don't, then it's going to make me think that I'm right in that they just, they just finally kind of caved in under all the pressure and everything that's been going on. So we'll see. I'm going with the Redskins here. I think they'll make a nice comeback here after their performance last week. But it should be a good game. 1:00 p.m. Eastern from Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana. Huge game here on CBS. 4-2 Chiefs, 1-2 on the road, 3-4 Colts, 2-1 at home. I think this is a must-win for the Colts, and it's going to be a tough one because the Chiefs are really good. The Chiefs are back in play. They did what they usually do. They started off slow, and now they picked it up. This is when they start to rattle off win after win. Colts had a must-win last week. They won it, but now they play a very tough opponent in their building. And look, if they lose this, are they completely done? No. But to me, given it's the Colts, given all the expectations, given all the pressure they've been under and their collapse a couple weeks ago in that game against the Texans, and, given the fact that the division's right there, you got the Titans at 4-4, you got the Texans at 4-3, they have got to rattle off three or four in a row. And the longer you take to do that, the more difficult it's going to be. So this is a big game for the Colts, and to beat a team like this, even if it's in your own building, that shouldn't take away from it. To beat a team like this will give them a lot of confidence. So this is a big game for the Colts. Unfortunately, I just don't think they're good enough. They put themselves into deep holes. Their offense sometimes takes a while to get going, and that's not going to happen with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to play well right from the start, and to me, that's the difference. And obviously they're far better defensively than the Colts. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs. I just think they're the better team. Doesn't matter where you play them. So I'm going with the Chiefs here. 1:00 p.m. Eastern game on CBS from Tampa, Florida. 5-2 Raiders, 4-0 on the road, 3-3 Buccaneers, 0-2 at home. Buccaneers, your reward for getting back to 500 and getting back into the mix is to play the Raiders, who have not lost a game on the road and who are coming off a big win last weekend. I like the Raiders here. It's a battle between two teams I thought were sleeper teams this year. They both have played well at times, and in the Buccaneers' case, have played bad at times. Raiders have played well pretty much all season. I think the Raiders are the better team. I think it's odd, but they played better on the road, which is interesting. Derek Carr's played really well. I think it's going to be a close, competitive game. Unfortunately, I just think the Raiders are the better team. I think the Raiders have the better defense, and I think you can. I think that even what works for the Buccaneers on offense, they're very young there, so sometimes they make a little some costly mistakes, especially late. So because of that, I think I got to go with Oakland here. I just think they're the better team. But I do expect a very close competitive game between these two teams. 1:00 p.m. Eastern from New Orleans, Louisiana. This game on Fox. The 4-1-1. I'm going to hate saying that all year. 4-1-1 Seahawks, who are 1-1-1 on the road at the 2-4 Saints, 1-2 at home. Easy game to pick. Saints losing last week. I think even though mathematically you can still see a way for them to pull this out, I don't. I think the Saints are done. And playing this team, playing Seattle, even at your building, in your building, I think it's still tough. Defensively, they're going to give the Saints fits. And obviously, defensively, the Saints don't present a lot. I like Seattle here. I think this game's not even close. I think Seattle wins this one easily. I think their defense will really give them fits. And I think, it's the Saints are. It's really interesting because with Drew Brees and such. I think on offense they're mentally tough, but on defense they're clearly not. And I think that's because they're just not a good defense. So and they know it. I think they finally realized there used to be a time a few years back, even though they weren't a very good defense, they never listened to the criticism. They were just, you know what? What do they know? We do the best we can. Now I think they believe it. You can see in the way they play defense. Mentally, they're just not tough. Offensively, they are as far as their mental state, but not defensively. So. Anyway, I expect a big Seahawks win here, a dominant Seahawks win here, and I think that's what will happen. 1:00 p.m. Eastern game from Houston, Texas. 4-3 Lions, 1-2 on the road. 4-3 Texans, 4-0 at home. Who do you have more faith in? What Detroit's done at 4-3 or the Houston Texans have done at 4-3? I actually have more faith in the Detroit Lions. I think they've beaten better teams. Unfortunately, Detroit doesn't play as well on the road, whereas Houston has not lost a game this year in their building. So really, I think the pressure is going to be on the Houston defense, which I think is not bad. I don't think it's as good as people think it is, but it's not bad. Whereas Detroit, their defense is not great. It's not horrible. It's below average. So, really, to me, it's just going to be a case of this, can Houston's defense shut down the Detroit offense? Because we know the Detroit defense is not going to do much against the Houston offense, which, again, is not a great offense, but against a bad defense or a below-average defense like Detroit can be made to look better than it is. The key to me is the defense. If you're the better defensive team and you're at home, then that always gives you the edge. So I'm going to go with Houston here, although it really is to me, that game's a crapshoot because it really is whoever you buy into more, I guess. They got this game listed at 12 o'clock a.m. Eastern. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm pretty sure it's meant to be 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern, so we'll go with that. 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern game, CBS, Cleveland, Ohio. 2-5 Jets, 1-3 on the road, 0-7 Browns, 0-2 at home. Neither team's having a good season, although, again, I think the Jets are one of those teams under 500 you just don't want to play because they're still a good team. It's just, they've had some quarterback situations, been a mess. They've had some tough luck. They got a big win against the Ravens last week. They're a better team. I don't think this is going to be close. I think the Jets win this one big. It's the Browns. It's easy pick. Jets. No doubt. 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern game on CBS from Buffalo, New York. Probably one of the biggest games of the weekend. 6-1 Patriots, 3-0 at home. 4-3 Bills, 2-1 at home. I should say they're 3-0 on the road, the Patriots. Bills 2-1 at home. Kind of screwed it up there. Bills beat the Patriots in their building, although that was a Patriot team without Tom Brady. Patriots coming off a dominant win. Bills coming off a tough loss. Rex Ryan's teams have always played the Patriots tough on defense. That means I expect a close competitive game. Look, Buffalo gets this in their building. That gives them a lot of an edge. The key to this game to me, I expect a really good performance by the Bills defensively. I think they'll keep this game close in the low 20s. The key to this game to me is Tyrod Taylor. He's gonna have a lot of pressure on him. He's gonna have to be mobile with the ball. He might have to take the ball down the field himself quite a few times running the ball. I think he's gonna have to be very, very mobile. The Patriots are gonna shut down a lot of passing lanes for him. He's going to have to be ready and willing to run that ball for a few yards here and there. He has to make himself available for that. You can't just go back and rely on just throwing for 5, 6, 7 yards or even you can't rely on that. You might have to run for those kind of yards. Downfield, you might have a chance because that's where the Patriots are always weak on defense is downfield in the secondary. But if you're going to try to rely on these close screen passes, 5, 6, 7 yards, ain't going to have them. You might have a better chance at running for them. It'll be very important for the Bills to get the running game going. McCoy and even with Tyrod Taylor. It's a very important thing. Running the ball is going to be the big key for them. And then if you can get some plays downfield, take them, but don't force them, obviously, because that's where the Patriots are weak, but you still can't force them either. So I am picking the Patriots to win here. I think it'll be a very close game, but I do think the Bills stand a chance, especially if they get the running game going. So I'm picking the Patriots, but it should be a good game to watch. 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern game on Fox from Charlotte, North Carolina. 3-1 Cardinals, 1-1 on the road. At the 1-5 Panthers, 1-2 at home. It's a tough draw for the 1-5 Panthers coming off a bye. You saw how good the Cardinal defense was against Seattle last week. Their defense has been playing well. Offensively, they had a lot of momentum going into last week, although, again, I think the defense was just too good last week. I don't think it's really a bearing on their offense. I expect a very good performance by Arizona here. They are playing on the road at Carolina. Carolina has not played well. Obviously, there's been Cam Newton and such. I don't like Carolina here. I suppose there's always a chance with their defense. If their defense gets back in line, which their defense has been atrocious going into the bye, which is their one consistent thing about them was always their defense, even before Cam Newton got good. Their defense was their strength, but their defense has not been a strength this year. If their defense doesn't play well, this game isn't even close. If their defense plays up to capability, then they can make this a close game and maybe even sneak in a win here. The question will be, even if they keep it a close game, do they have enough offense? And I don't think they do. So I'm picking Arizona to win a close game. I do expect a little bit of a better performance from the Panther defense, but I don't think it'll be enough. I'm picking Arizona here. 4:05 p.m. Eastern. If we move to the 4 o'clock games, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. Denver, Colorado. 3-4 Chargers, 1-3 on the road. 5-2 Broncos, 3-1 at home. Chargers had a big win in overtime last week. A nice chance to get back to 500. They can pull this win out. Makes that division even tougher if they can pull this out. The Chargers are not a bad team. They're a competitive team. It's just about they've been so many close games. They've lost so many close games. I expect a similar game here. I think this will be close. I think they'll stay in it. The question is, can they close the deal late? If they have a lead, can they close it out? And if they don't have a lead, can they come back late? I mean, it really is the key of them making plays late, whether it's to close the game out or to come back and win the game. I don't have enough faith. I don't have enough faith in them to do that, even though they did do that last week. Most teams would build on what they did last week. Hey, you know what? We won a game late. We finished off a game. We did it. We finally did it. But the Chargers are just, you've seen what they've done over the last couple of years and this season, and they're just a team that boggles your mind. They should be better than they are, and they just lose a lot of close games. They just have some bad luck. And playing in Denver, which is a tough place to play, Denver got back on track last week. Their defense gives you fits. I just can't pick against Denver, and especially given the Chargers' history. So I'm picking Denver here over the Chargers. 4:25 p.m. Eastern game on Fox from the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, Georgia. 4-2 Packers, 1-1 on the road. 4-3 Falcons, 1-2 at home. Very, very good game. Packers come off a very solid win. Falcons come off 2 straight losses. Atlanta has not played well at home this year. Really, it's going to be about which Atlanta team shows up as far as their defense goes. Offensively, I think they've done fine. Defensively, they have not been good the last couple of weeks. And if they play defense the way they did last week, they're not going to be in this game. Green Bay's going to be all over them. So it really is a key. Will Atlanta's defense step up? If it does, they win this game. Because I think they've shown themselves when they play their defense the way they're capable of. They are a very good team. If their defense doesn't show up, I think the Packers win this game. This is going to be a close game. I'm going with Atlanta here. I'm going out on a limb here. This is a tough pick for me. I'm going with Atlanta here because I think their defense is going to pick it back up this week. And I've noticed I've noticed some issues with Green Bay's defense this year, which again, it's not nothing surprising. They've had some issues over the years, but I think their secondary has taken some hits this year. So, I think Atlanta can, and now that Atlanta seems willing to throw the ball downfield, as demonstrated by their offensive numbers this year, I think that presents a problem for Green Bay. So I'm picking Atlanta here. 8:30 p.m. Eastern, NBC, Sunday Night Football from AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. 4-2 Eagles, 1-2 on the road at the 5-1 Cowboys, 2-1 at home. Cowboys coming off a bye. Huge game. Might be one of the better Sunday night games of the season. Eagles coming off a big win last weekend. Have played very well on both sides of the football. Had a couple bad weeks here and there, but they played very well. Other than that, Cowboys have been very good behind Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Very consistent on both sides of the football. This to me is going to be a very good game. Probably, it might be one of the best games of the season you're going to see. I expect a well played game. I think it's an even keel game. I think that Dallas has maybe a few more defensive playmakers. It could come down to who makes the plays late, and being at home gives you a little bit of an edge. I think that Dak Prescott has shown you an efficiency and a poise with the football that you wouldn't have expected from a rookie quarterback. This is a tough call for me. This is a tough call picking this game. This is a very, very tough call. Very tough call. And honestly, I'm going to pick Dallas only because they're the home team. If this were Philly, I might pick Philly. I really would. They both beaten good teams. They both, I think this is a very even matchup. I really do. I'm just going to pick Dallas because they're at home. I know that's just a very crappy rationale, but that's just being honest. I'm just going with Dallas because they're at home. That's pretty much it. Monday night game, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, ESPN from Soldier Field, Chicago, Illinois. 5-1 Vikings, 2-1 on the road at the 1-6 Bears, 1-2 at home. Vikings coming off their first loss. Bears having a terrible season. I think the Vikings get back on track here. This probably won't be a very pretty game. But obviously the Bears, we know defensively are very solid. And This is offensively where they're not particularly good right now. Very inconsistent, obviously. And look, you combine their inconsistency on offense with a very good Vikings defense, it probably bodes for a very low-scoring game. So I expect the Vikings to grind this out. This will probably be a very low-scoring game, and I think that favors the Vikings. So Vikings for me in this game. Rams, Dolphins, Giants, Steelers, 49ers, Ravens all have byes this week. So quite a few teams with byes this week. As we try to over these next couple of weeks, you'll start to see teams finish out these byes before we get to the final few weeks of the season here. So on paper, some great matchups: Eagles, Cowboys, Packers, Falcons, Chargers, Broncos, Patriots, Bills. Some very good games. Should be an interesting week 8 as we will be watching the second portion of the season come to an end this week. Hard to believe. So it should be a very interesting week 8 in the NFL. We now flip the script to college football. Again, there's not a lot to go on here. Not a lot of good matchups last weekend. Not a lot at all. As you look at the score, and look, with no playoff rankings still to really talk about, again, it makes it very hard to really look at things and really go in depth on things and kind of see where teams are at, what they need to do, and all that kind of stuff. But as you look back at last week's games, week 8 of the season, and again, we're finishing, the season's just flying by right now. Not a whole lot. Like, not a whole lot of big performances. You got to keep an eye on Boise State here. They almost came close to a tough loss. Managed to get the win last week. Alabama dominated on Texas A&M. Alabama's just not going to lose. It's just the way it is. Alabama's probably going to the title game. I mean, they've answered every bell right now. Every bell. Ohio State's loss to Penn State is huge. We'll see what the implications are there. I think the only way Ohio State gets back in it now is if they beat Michigan late in the season. And if they don't, then I think the very high likelihood is that Michigan right now will end up in that title game if Michigan doesn't lose the rest of the way. I'm not in the title game. Michigan ends up in the playoffs. I think you'll see Alabama. I think Alabama's got a lock right now. And I think Michigan's a lock. And unless they lose to Ohio State, then I think it's going to be the final spot will be between Ohio State and Michigan. We'll see. But Ohio State losing to Penn State takes them out of the mix for right now. And you move Michigan up to that 2 line. You watch Washington. Washington's on the outside looking in right now. I think they're right there. Dominant performance by them. Louisville didn't. Louisville never endangering against NC State like Clemson was, all over them. Wisconsin got back on track a little bit. Houston suffered a tough loss, which I think takes them out of the running if they weren't already out of the running. Not a lot of movement last week. Not a lot of big happenings. I think the only thing that I think if you take away from last week is that with Alabama being A&M, I don't think Alabama's going to lose the rest of the regular season. I think right now, not that I think they're already in anyway, but I think they pretty much secured themselves a spot in the playoffs. And I think that's the same can be said for Michigan right now. Obviously, if they were to lose to Ohio State, that might be different. They might only take one of those teams. But right now, I think, as it stands right now, unlike Alabama, though, because I think if Alabama loses the game, I think they'd still be in. If Michigan loses the game, I think they'd be in a precarious situation. I still think right now they'd probably still be in. But, again, a lot would depend and leave them vulnerable to getting knocked out. But if the season ended today, Michigan would be in, Alabama would be in, Michigan would be in. No doubt about it. And Michigan moves up to that 2. Will move up to that 2 line with Ohio State's loss. And I think right now you have to move Ohio State out and you have to put Washington in. I think you have to because of the way they played. So opens the door for Washington for right now. And if Washington can kind of finish out strong here, I think Washington's going to be in a situation where they can't lose. Washington, I think, needs to run the table. If Washington wins the table, I think they're going to be in the playoffs. I really do. They just have to run the table. I don't think they can sustain a loss. Ohio State could sustain a loss depending on how things go with Michigan, I think. Michigan could sustain a loss, but again, that might depend on Ohio State. If Michigan loses before they get to Ohio State and then they lose to Ohio State, they have no chance. If Michigan loses before they get to Ohio State and then they go on to be Ohio State, Michigan goes. Just like I think if Ohio State's loss, it takes them out, but if Ohio State turns around and beats Michigan, that puts them in. I mean, the only team right now that's a for sure lock, and no matter what happens, unless they lose like the rest of the way, is Alabama. No doubt, Alabama's. I mean, they played a lot of ranked teams and they pulled it out. And I don't think Alabama's in any danger whatsoever right now. They're gonna be in the playoffs, no question. But the thing, and that's the thing you take away from it, is that Alabama's a lock. Ohio State right now, that loss takes them out of the picture, secures Michigan for right now, and probably puts Washington in play. I think that's what you take away from last week because there wasn't anything else of interest outside of those developments. And you keep an eye on Boise State, too, because they're at 14 in the country, and they continue to rise, and they're kind of pushing forward here. Now you go into week 9 this week, and you look around, is there any interesting matchups? Michigan State might be an interesting match. You know, Michigan State's 2-5. I like to think that's not going to be much of a game, so I don't think that's – but I guess if you're a fan of this pure college football, like rivalries, you might be interested in that game. Let's see, what else? Washington, Utah is of great interest because, again, I feel like Washington has to run the table to get into the playoffs. Baylor, Texas might be tough. Keep an eye on that because Baylor's kind of on the outside looking in. Let's see what else is there. Nebraska, Wisconsin's a big game for obvious reasons, both right there on the outer fringe. Clemson, Florida State, which is a big game on ABC Saturday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. That's a big game for them. If Florida State has any chance of even being in this thing, they got to knock off Clemson. And a loss by Clemson here might knock them out because you could see a situation where Louisville gets in, and I don't think if Louisville runs the table, which is entirely possible at this point. Now, see, the question you'd have is this. Clemson beat Louisville. So could you put Louisville in over Clemson when they beat them? That would leave a debate there. Clemson would lose there. So it makes some interesting developments happen if Clemson were to lose this game, and then they both sit, if both Clemson and Louisville sit there at one loss with one spot in the playoffs available, what do you do? You know, I would imagine you'd put Clemson in over Louisville because Clemson beat Louisville, but I don't know. It opened up a debate, and debates in college football are always interesting. So those are some of the matchups that I think are interesting and worthwhile. I do think Clemson will beat Florida State. So I don't think I think it'll be a moot point. I actually like Wisconsin to beat Nebraska. I just like their defense better, to be honest. I think Baylor will beat Texas. I think Washington will beat Utah. So I don't think we're going to have any huge upsets this weekend. So I think everything will pretty much stand pat as we go into week 10 next week. And that's really all I got to say because, again, we don't have any playoff rankings yet. And when we get those, it'll be a little more interesting. We can kind of see where everybody's at. Truly, right now, we're just assuming we know where people are at right now as far as the rankings go. And so we'll see what happens. I imagine over the course of the next couple of weeks, we'll get the rankings, things we'll start having more to dive into and more to talk about. And again, same thing with the mailbag I mentioned earlier. We used to do that late in the season, NFL, college football topics, anything you guys and girls out there send in, questions or comments, we usually address them at the end of the show related to issues in football, whether it's college or pro football. Again, we're not going to do that right now because there's really not much to talk about, nor have any of you really sent much in as far as that goes. So we're not going to do that. So again, over these next couple of weeks, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to keep saying it until it starts. We'll bring back that mailbag segment. We'll talk some other topics related to NFL and college football. Because again, things will pick up once as you get late into the season. They always do. Things will pick up, and next week we go into November, and that's usually when things truly do pick up anyway. So, and we'll also have some college football playoff rankings to dive into and such over the next couple of weeks too. So, we'll get a little bit more content here. Just bear with us. But right now, it's just not a whole lot going on. College football is kind of in a lull. Things are just kind of meandering along. There's not a whole lot of topics right now outside of what's going on the field to talk about, which is always good. You want it to be more focused on the field anyway. So, all right. So with that being said, we've gotten through what we have to get through, and what I feel like, again, there's nothing really else to go to do right now. So we will close things out. As always, I want to remind you all, just because the show is over does not mean you have to stop interacting or contributing to the show. Continue to have your voice heard. Send us your feedback, your questions, or concerns related to the show or scheduling of the show, topic ideas or breaking news items you want us to cover related to sports, entertainment, or wrestling, reactions, comments, or opinions on things we said on the show or things we talked about on the show. Any of these things you can do by email, Facebook, and Twitter. You can email us at itspotlight401@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight401. Please be sure to use the hashtag itspotlight401. Or, of course, you can always use create your own hashtag as long as it starts with hashtag ITS. That way you help promote our show. And as long as it's not disrespectful, that would be great. If you want to do that, you can go ahead and do that. Just don't be disrespectful. That's all we ask. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search for In the Spotlight 401 on Facebook. And make sure you like our page upon finding it. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest information about our show, especially as it relates to scheduling. You saw what happened today. Now, I didn't post anything on social media. I just wasn't able to. Most of the time, I will try to do that. But you saw today, we were an hour and a half behind what we wanted to be. So sometimes things happen, especially with these Friday shows. So very important to follow us on social media to make sure that you get the latest information about scheduling and anything else related to the show. And of course, also keep in mind, we always post opinions and stuff on there too. So you can get you can get opinions and other different things on there as well. So keep all that in mind. And make sure you follow us on social media so you can make sure to catch all that and be up to date on anything related to the show. If you'd like to keep up with our show, look back at classic episodes or episodes you may never even seen before or heard before. You want to do any of that, you have a number of ways in which to do that. You can, if you're more of a fan of streaming, maybe you like seeing us on screen. Maybe you're only interested in more recent episodes of our show, maybe just stuff that we produced on Google Plus and YouTube. If any of that applies to you, then you want to search for us on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search for In the Spotlight 401, and you'll have access to every episode that we produced for Google Plus and YouTube over the last year of our show. Everything from mid-October right up into today's episode is on there for you to stream at your convenience anytime you want. Whether you missed an episode, missed a part of an episode, want to watch an episode again, any of that applies to you. You can do that anytime here on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search for In the Spotlight 411. If you're more of a fan of audio podcasts and maybe you want to listen to us on the go, maybe you prefer to listen to us, not necessarily see us on screen, I can't blame you for that. Might be less awkward, I don't know. And also, if you're interested in older episodes of our show beyond the last year of our show, if any of that applies to you, you might want to check us out on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on both those sites, and you will have access to every episode that we've ever produced. Everything from our original run on Blog Talk Radio from October 2010 to January 2011. Everything from Talk Shoe from January 2011 all the way up until mid-October of last year. And, of course, every episode we've done on Google Plus and YouTube from mid-October of last year all the way up into today's episode right here, right now, all transferred into audio format for your convenience. Every episode we've ever done is available on Podbean and iTunes in order from the most recent to the oldest, anytime you wish. Whether you missed an episode, missed a part of an episode, want to listen to an episode again, maybe there's an episode from 3 or 4 years ago that you never even seen before that you want to check out. Maybe you're a new fan and wants to check out some of those old episodes. Maybe you're a long-time fan that wants to look back at those episodes again for whatever reason. Or you're just trying to keep up on episodes and you missed an episode, whatever the case may be. If any of that applies to you, you can find us on Podbean and iTunes to search for In the Spotlight 411. So Google Plus, YouTube, Podbean, and iTunes, all ways to keep up with the show and look back at episodes anytime you wish. To search for In the Spotlight 411. Again, search for In the Spotlight 411 on all those sites. I want to thank myself for our great show, pat myself on the back, and thank all of you for your continued support and contributions to the show. Thank you so much for watching, and to those that will be watching or listening later, thank you to you as well. Again, apologize for being late this afternoon. Work-related, I can't help it. I have to work for a living, so what can you do? But I do apologize for that. Thank you for your patience and your understanding and sticking with us. that is it for this week. Our next show will be our Tuesday night primetime show next Tuesday, which will be our first show of November. This coming Tuesday, November the 1st, we'll be broadcasting and streaming live here on Google Plus and YouTube at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be our sports and wrestling show. We'll talk about the World Series and any other sports headlines we have to cover outside of football. Of course, we don't talk about football until football Blitz. We'll do wrestling. We'll talk about the fallout from WWE's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, which is taking place this Sunday. And, of course, talk about the fallout from Monday Night Raw on Monday night. So all of that will be on Tuesday. Of course, we'll also have a Thursday night primetime show next Thursday. Entertainment Thursday, we'll be talking about we'll do our box office beat, TV highlights. We'll have our holiday movie preview, all that next Thursday. And, of course, next Friday will be the next edition of the In the Spotlight 4-on-1 Football Blitz. Also, this coming on our next show on Tuesday night, we'll also have an NBA preview for you as well. So that'll be a big show. So Tuesday, NBA preview, World Series discussion, wrestling, Monday Night Raw, WWE Hell in a Cell, all that on Tuesday. Next Thursday, holiday movie preview, box office beat, TV highlights, all that good stuff. And next Friday, the In the Spotlight 4-on-1 Football Blitz. So next Tuesday and Thursday, our usual primetime shows, both broadcasting and streaming live on Google Plus and YouTube at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, next Friday, the In the Spotlight Football Blitz. As always, we'll try for 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but obviously that could always end up being later, so keep that in mind. So all of that next week. That's our schedule for next week. 3 shows, back to our normal schedule next week. Unless something changes, which of course I'll let you all know by social media, by Facebook or Twitter, if anything like that happens. So until next week, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, a great weekend, a great Halloween. Please be safe, enjoy. I hope, and of course, a great start to your week next week. So enjoy the holiday, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you back here for our next show in prime time this coming Tuesday night, November the 1st, at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I hope you all enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next week.